What's up, y'all? I'm Yancey from Kickstarter. First, a shout out to the woman up front for having our back with Facebook. I appreciate that. Yeah, so Kickstarter's been around for 7 years. We launched 7 years ago, 2009. We have been live here in Germany for 14 months. So it went live end of last May. In those 14 months, there have been 16 million euro pledged to German projects and creators. And most excitingly, throughout this year, the success rate for German projects is going up month by month, which means that this is a model that is growing and people are becoming more accustomed to, which we're really excited to see. I wanted to shout out 2 quick projects before I get into the talk that I just think are worth putting up on a big screen. There we go. First is a subwoofer on your wrist, clearly something we all need. But the Baselet, a very clever project, up to almost €500,000 in pledges in just a couple of weeks. And another one that I backed, this is a designer in Frankfurt who's done about a dozen projects. This one turning Albert Einstein's handwriting into a font. So it's a very diverse and disparate world on Kickstarter, which is something that we like a lot. And today I want to talk a bit about some of the values behind Kickstarter and what I think it means to be an entrepreneur today. And I want to start by talking about a series of works by a Chinese artist named Zhang Wei. And these are obviously photographs of very famous, iconic people, except that actually these are composite photographs of just Chinese people who Zhang takes portraits of. And his thesis is that in this mass media age, we are defined more by the media heroes than we even are by ourselves. So each of these photos is a composite of 1,000 different faces, Chinese faces, and it's just showing how that is a lot of what defines us. Now, I think if we think about footballers or pop stars or teenagers, we think, sure, everyone has their idols that shape the way they think about things, but this is also true in technology, and I think it's important to be aware of the ways that we are influenced. So if you look at tech media, and just the way business is covered today, it is quite violent. It is extremely aggressive, out for blood, go to war, own the world. Companies are judged not by how many jobs they create, but by how many jobs they end. Those are the ones that are celebrated. It's very divisive. It's very aggressive. And at the core of this, of course, is money. It's people investing money in these companies, people trying to make more money for themselves, and ultimately that is the end goal of all these things, infinite growth for the desire of infinite riches. Now, of course, when all of society works this way, the results are horrific. It is inequality. It is an incredibly imbalanced society, and it is one that is increasingly led by a money monoculture of just people trying to optimize their money to make more money, and the rest of the world is just a palette for them to operate on. And you see this across everything. In music, a shockingly high number of hit pop songs are written by 4 mostly bald Scandinavian men. In Hollywood, most of what we see now are sequels or remakes of existing IP, all presented in IMAX and 3D. Every magazine cover has Taylor Swift on it. And all of these things are because these are the safe bets. For someone looking to make money on their money, you get safe bets. And this is the sort of culture that you get. And it's not just the cultural landscape that's shaped, it's even the physical landscape. This is a map of New York City. It's still not loading. Looks like we're frozen. Yeah, there we go. So I live in New York City. Currently in New York, in just Manhattan, there are 1,800 physical bank locations across the city. That is up 60% from 10 years ago. You would think the ATM was never invented. And the challenge with all these banks appearing on street corners or other chains, restaurants, clothing stores, cell phone stores, whatever, is that what had been there before were local businesses, were small shops run by New Yorkers for their community. But commercial real estate has become the new easy way to make money. And so the rents get jacked up, the person that's been there for 30 years gets pushed out, and a Bank of America goes into its place. This is how a city dies. This is how a culture dies. And this is increasingly happening. This is the globalization that is appearing around the world. It's sort of a moneyed imperialism of changing local cultures. And it's really hard to talk about, and it's really important to talk about at the same time. Berlin is feeling this. It seems like any city that has any kind of dynamic culture or where young people live at all starts to experience this, and it's unclear what to do about it. And so I think this is true for entrepreneurs. I think it's true for cities. I think this is the big battle of our age. So what can you do about it? I don't have like a solution, but I have 3 places where I think it starts. And the first is don't sell out. Now, I'm 37 years old. I grew up with like the Kurt Cobain, corporate rock sucks, selling out is the worst thing you could ever do school of thought. And selling out means you have a great idea and then you use it to just personally enrich yourself, and who gives a shit about what happens to it afterwards? The idea of selling out being bad, that has gone out of style. Now selling out is cool. That is to be celebrated. Oh, they exited for how much money? Wow, they're like super awesome. It's very short-sighted. And it suggests a very bottom-line thinking that is not in the broader self-interest of society, that is just in the self-interest of those entrepreneurs, of those people who hold all that equity. Don't sell out also means you don't sell out your values or your culture to hit a short-term gain, to try to make the deal happen, that you have a clear set of values that you're operating with. Taking a big VC round is another type of selling out, because once you take a big check like that, you're not able to guide your mission on your own terms. You are having to follow somebody else's. And so to not sell out, it's important that you are sustainable as a business. So you have a source of revenue that allows you to continue to operate and grow. This is an incredibly liberating thing. It lets you be your own bitch. It lets you call the shots and do what you want to do. For Kickstarter, we have operated in the black since our 14th month of business. June 2010, we were in the black for the first time, and we have stayed there. We operate within our means. Every dollar we spend, we're quite thoughtful of, because this is not a big VC check. This is money that was earned through people having success with our service. So we think very carefully about how we spend that. But if you're able to have your own source of revenue and you're able to sustain yourself, you don't have to sell out. You continue to operate in whatever way you like. And that leads to the second point, which is that you should be idealistic. You know, when you start a company, there are so many, or any sort of project, you know, you're really compelled by just some deep burning thing in your heart. There's something you really want to change. There's something you really want to be different. And I think those things come from very idealistic places. But the challenge as something exists and is out there in the world is that every day, there are infinite opportunities to compromise on that vision. It could be that a competitor has done something that seems like it might be successful. It's not something you ever thought you would do, but, oh wait, do we have to do this now? Is this the new terms of engagement? And so you have to be very careful about your beliefs. You don't want to sink into the morass of industry standards, because industry standards are lowering every single day by everyone just trying to chase growth, chase revenue, and it just okays other people to do the same. So you really have to lock in your values and the ideals behind your project from the very beginning. At that nascent stage where it's all romance and you're just dreaming how big, how powerful can this thing be, think about the things that are important to you then and lock them in. Make sure you always stay true to those things, that you act with integrity. We were very clear about this for Kickstarter from the very beginning. Myself and my co-founders, Perry Chin and Charles Adler, we vowed from the beginning that we never wanted to sell Kickstarter. We never wanted to try to IPO, that we thought about this as a sort of public trust, that it made sense to us that In society, there should be a place reserved for new ideas, and that's a place that should be protected. It's not something that should be sullied by overt commercialization or advertising or any of those sorts of corrupting forces. It should be kept as a place for ideas as pure as it can be. So we've always operated with that mentality. And last year, we took an additional step to legally formalize that, becoming a benefit corporation, a public benefit corporation. It's a very new thing in the United States. And what this says is that it legally binds you to have a positive influence on society. And you draft a charter to say on what basis that will happen. For us, it was about supporting artistic and creative works, especially those in less commercial areas. It includes a pledge to not employ legal but esoteric tax avoidance strategies. It includes a pledge to engage with issues facing artists and creators beyond our walls. It includes pledging to donate 5% of our after-tax profits every year to organizations fighting to end systemic inequality and organizations providing arts and music education in New York City. So these are the things that were important to us, that we spent a lot of time drafting and have legally bound the company to follow for as long as it exists. And this is a way that the ideals that are so present in the creation of Kickstarter and are so present in the 120 of us who work there, that those things are maintained throughout its entire life. The third point is to be generous. So, to be perfectly honest, acting out of integrity and values is a harder road in a lot of ways. It means you're not going to have that big check because that VC who asks you, you'll do anything if we give you this 40 million, right? Yeah, totally. No, you don't do those things. Instead, you're operating within your means. Every choice you have to make is a real choice. And yeah, it's sort of a slower road. You're not going for the hockey stick. We want to be huge overnight. It's a longer haul. But in more important ways, it's easier. It's easier because those decisions where there's a moral question about what to do and balancing the needs of the business with what you believe to be right, there's more clarity on those things. There's more freedom to act with conviction. Just a small example, last week was a horrific week in the U.S. There are 2 murders of people by police, and there was murders of police in response, quite awful. And we felt that, this is obviously just a huge watershed moment that is deeply affecting. So we put on the nav of Kickstarter, right below our logo, Black Lives Matter, and directing people to a page where they can support them and get involved. And that was something that it's obviously a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but there's a clarity for us about there's something wrong. We really have a strong position on this, and we need to express it. And we need to feel free to do that. And so because these things are in place, we have the freedom to act with conviction. But, being generous is important because it takes a lot to take this path. It takes a lot of strength, a lot of fortitude, a lot of conviction. And we have to support other people who do that. We have to support other artists, other creators. You have to support them directly. And people are willing to do this. I mean, this is the stats for Kickstarter to date. So it's 7 years, $2.5 billion, 100,000 successfully funded projects, 11 million plus backers. And these are people supporting projects just because they think they're cool, because it's interesting. They like the idea of a world where that exists. This is not for financial self-interest. This is not the money monoculture. This is people just wanting to support someone doing something cool. And there are lots of ways to do that. If you've been listening to someone's album on Spotify for the last week or on SoundCloud, go to Bandcamp and buy their record. Make sure you give them money. Support independent businesses rather than chains. Really choose to spend your money and put your energy towards people, towards artists, towards companies that are behaving in this way. If gravitational forces start to shift in that direction, it will shift culture. It really will. And Kickstarter's internal handbook, when new employees start, includes a lot of our philosophy in thinking about the world. And this is the final page. We champion and celebrate the creation of art and culture. Fuck the monoculture. So for us, our mission is around creative projects. The way we're trying to fuck the monoculture is through encouraging art and creativity and a more richer, diverse culture that is less controlled by money, that is more controlled by individual voices and by audiences. But there are lots of ways to do that. There's lots of ways to challenge the status quo. And that is a reason I was really excited to come to Berlin. Because I think this is a very interesting moment in the life of this community. After what happened in the UK 2 weeks ago, it seems quite likely that the gravitational force of technology innovation will shift squarely to Berlin. And that's going to mean a lot of changes. It's probably going to mean a lot more money coming into this community. It's going to mean more people coming here to start things. And at a moment like this, I think there's a very interesting opportunity for this community to define what it means to be a company from Berlin. So if you think about American companies, Silicon Valley companies, there's a lot of focus on hypergrowth, on disruption, things along those lines. A lot of power being amassed in platforms and users having very little power. And I would suggest that for Berlin, there's an opportunity to balance that. There's an opportunity to build a code around building products or services or exploring creative projects that empower the individual, that are about decentralizing the web, that are about giving everyone more power over their data, over what their experience is online, that are about paying creators and supporting people pursuing open source or pursuing projects that are not simply looking to make as much money as possible. The internet needs a force like this. It needs a counterbalance. It needs someone looking out for the rights of the individuals because we're moving towards the future at a very fast rate. And just a few projects here can really define a new way of thinking and a new future for the web. And I think that this is a moment where groups of people here in this room can make choices, can draft language, can think about what it means for this city to be producing schools of thought that are starting to shape the world. This is the moment where you can really define that, and I encourage you to take advantage of that moment. Yeah. And that's all I've got for you. It's such a privilege to speak in this room and be with all of you. Just thank you so much for listening and for having me here today. And yeah, thank you so much.
What a talk. What a talk to Entor. Are you up for a few questions? Are you up for a few questions from the audience?
Sure. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Any question from the audience? Yep, here.
Thank you very much for this wonderful talk. I have one question where you said that we are more and more, or we can, as a consumer, decide where we are going in the society and that the society will shift at some point. Kickstarter is a good example, I think. I don't know if you know, Redbubble is a good example too. And where do you think we are in this transition? Are we in a good way, or are we stagnating, or?
Yeah, it seems to me like it's growing. I mean, certainly, like just even the Kickstarter model, as we saw from the Facebook presentation, is continuing to grow. But I think that obviously there's a lot more empowerment happening along these lines. But there are critical mass moments where things change. I think in the US, we've seen this in the world of food and agribusiness, a big shift towards organic products that really took, I think, a lot of people by surprise. But it was really led by consumers saying, I'm just more interested in supporting these sorts of things and that sort of things. And all these giant companies that are just, focused on their own self-interest, they're like, okay, that's what we have to build now. So there's a co-opting of that maybe is not great, but ultimately it is shifting society in a more sustainable direction. So I think the swing is possible. I mean, I think a lot of people are ready for it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your motivational speech. I wanted to know the stand of Kickstarter towards Bitcoin and decentralized initiatives like Open Bazaar.
Yeah, the question was, what do I think about Bitcoin and Open Bazaar? I'm starting to understand the blockchain. Starting to. I can fake it. Yeah, I'm very supportive of Bitcoin, Ethereum. I think Open Bazaar is a great project. I think a level of decentralized marketplace like that is quite radical, and I can't even begin to think about what all that means, but I'm very interested in models like that happening. We currently don't accept Bitcoin on Kickstarter because the currency fluctuations are so wild, and we don't collect your charge for like 30 days. So there's always some funkiness there. But certainly I root for the success of alternative models like those. Anything else?
Any other question?
So I want to know what's your opinion regarding crowd giving. So like there are many companies like trying to raise money for charity, and is Kickstarter doing something about crowd giving and this kind of projects?
So Kickstarter is, our focus is squarely on creative projects. So we don't, if there is obviously like if you're raising money for like a conservatory or a school that's teaching, music, something like that is something that we permit, but we don't allow charitable funding. We're just focused on creativity. My partner Perry first had the idea for this entire model. Came up with the concept of crowdfunding in 2001. And at the time, saw that this could be used for any number of models, but he's an artist. I was a music critic before. Charles was a graphic designer. So we are not traditional entrepreneurs. We are creative people. So this is always what we've been focused on doing. But certainly, it's as a model of a disaggregated fundraising, it's worked incredibly well for charitable causes, for all sorts of things. I think it's a model that will be applied to more and more stuff as time goes on.
Thank you very much, Yancey.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Give him a big round of applause. Thanks for coming by, man. Thank you.